Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, we're expecting those 4 persons, those gentlemen, but we're hoping that all of them can make it, because at the moment, we do have Mr. Shina Fagbinro Byron, who is a former presidential candidate himself. He's a supporter of Labour Party's Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. Sitting right beside him is Mr. Fuad Oki, who is an APC chieftain. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Ayo.
Good to see you both again.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, we'll introduce, I guess, in Abuja soon, but let me start with you, Mr. Byron. Yeah. Well, looking at what is playing out in the polity, there is indeed so much dynamics, even though they tell you, look, it's still quite some months down the line before they get into proper contestation and see who's closer to breasting the tape. But we know that by the end of this month, the campaign will start. So Nigerians will start looking to see, as they market themselves, telling us where should who or what or Nigerians pitch their tent. So from what you've seen, why do you think that what is it that the Labour Party's presidential candidate brings to the table that could give him a chance?
Well, thank you very much for having me on the studio. And I just want to mention that unlike the 2019 election, this particular election is a marathon. It's not a sprint. The candidates will still have time to declare who they are, what they are, by their speeches or their silence. We will get to know exactly who they are. Some have not been able to be clear as to their agenda. Others have. But going back to Labour now, the main thing about Labour Party, and particularly Peter Obi, is that he is the difference that we want. If you saw the last toing and froing between Kazim and Fabi, yes, you'd see that it's not very well with PDP. It never was, and that's why they lost elections. APC has been in power for 8 years, and clearly, if Nigerians' reward system were to be the kind of reward system that rewards performance, nobody will vote APC again. At least you'll give them time to rest. PDP, on the other hand, they appear not to have listened, neither have they learned. And then again, you look at the relationship between APC and PDP, and you wonder what the difference is. So for me and for many Nigerians, it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. If Nigerians really want a change, a step change into the future, it's clear that Peter Obi has demonstrated the kind of capacity, the kind of difference. As a matter of fact, the first thing he did by excusing himself from the PDP at that time was in demonstration of the fact that, look, we can't be doing politics, business as usual. He left that party and that scenario because of the monetization, because of the bullying, that was happening at PDP at that time. So, and then again, we're entering we're progressing into the 21st century. This is 2023. This is not Nigeria of 1919. We have a younger generation, a huge population who have suffered, who have been excluded, who have been deprived, who have been abused. I recall one person described them as was it jobless youth or a very derogatory term. Meanwhile, everything that has brought glory to this country, entertainment, sports, literature, has been brought about, science, fintech, has been brought about by youth.
So you think the Labour Party candidate has a brighter chance of them all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has the brightest chance.
Right. Well, Mr. Oki, the thing about ruling parties is that they could either be overconfident, or they might just be a little tricky where they could just slip up and make a mistake in terms of all of this. But your party, I know you say they equally have a very good chance. But in the context of what Mr. Byron has said, how does that weigh against all of that?
Well, I want to start by reminding you in this studio my analog about the pretenders, the contenders, the contestants, and the candidates. And I would really want to wait until the 28th or after the 28th of September to begin to see who the candidates will be. What we presently have today, it's tweaking and hype. And as usual, I would not want to dwell.
Isn't that what politicians do? They hype things.
Listen, we go back to that same issue. Do we still have pretenders on the top? I think so. When are we likely to see contenders and candidates? Let the campaign start.
Who do you think these pretenders are?
Let the campaign start. We will see who the pretender was and who the candidates who want to contest are.
Sounds like you have some aces up your sleeves. But before we even go further, there's something that Mr. Byron began with that I would like you to speak to. For you, what is different this time around? You know, when we were having our own opening sequence, we said there are some things that we hear all too often every time, election build-ups are going on. But this time around, there are those who believe that things are markedly different from previous election cycles. For you, what is the most significant difference that would, plus or minus, make a significant impact in the results?
Adopted technology.
Beavers. How so?
We will not be able to really see that until around December, January, when Nigerians will really be in tune, wanting to go to the polls. One thing I'm sure of, it's this. Today, Nigerians are beginning to get that confidence that their votes will count, and those votes should and will indeed count. Now, I talked about hype. You recall a couple of months back when the continuous voters registration was on stream, and you see people gravitating towards one angle or one area, shouting, we want to register, we're not allowed to register, we're this. At the end of the exercise, I was saddened. Why? In Lagos State, with all the hypes, the number of those who fully completed their registration process, to me, was dismal. I was expecting in Lagos we'll have maybe 2 million registration, going by the hype. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, what do we have? So today you see people saying we're this, we're that, we're ready. For me, I want to wait until the whistle is blown. And it is then, I'll begin to look at what really the issues are. Today, you will see a presidential candidate go this way. Tomorrow, you will see the same candidate go that way. And all you see is hype. All you see is hype.
Well, Mr. Byron has been in the contest before. So perhaps speak to us about that before the campaign starts and when it does start. So what is it that may likely be the key determining factor in this case here?
Well, there are pre-campaign activities, and then there are during campaign activities. What you are seeing is pre-campaign activities, and throughout the elections there will always be hype. You see, going to have meetings with certain people is a hype. Describing your candidate as a particular fellow is a hype. Hype is such a general term that it could mean anything. But the truth of the matter is that candidates are looking for visibility. Granted, there are some candidates who have more name recognition and visibility than others, right? But there are a number of things that are going to happen. The question you asked was, what is the difference that, take for the APC, which my brother represents. Is APC coming to save Nigeria from APC? It's a question of the offer. Is the offer going to change during the campaign? Nigerians need to ask themselves questions. How do you describe someone who does the same thing in the same way and expects a change? The only thing that the APC is bringing to the table is just a new candidate, a different candidate brought before. But the candidate happens to be the leader of the party. Now, nobody has issues with the individuals. It is the policy of that party, the conduct of that party, the manner in which the party has governed Nigeria that has led us to where we are. How do you extricate the leader of the party from the policies of the party? Those are the questions that Nigerians need to ask.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, Chief, okay, if I understand what he's saying, right, pretenders or contenders, when the whistle is blown, they'll get into the field and the fray. And when that happens, Nigerians already know the APC. They've seen what they've done before. They know what they can do.
Okay.
They've seen what the PDP has done before. They know what they can do.
Okay.
So no matter how visible they are, with due respect to them, or they already have a mindset, some impression as to what they are about. So, and those parties are still peopled by the same people, for instance, the ruling party, peopled by the same people. Of course, some will leave, some will join, but largely the same people who were around when the party led. So what will be significantly different, whether they're a pretender or a contender?
Okay, again, my brother alluded to the process and possibly the activities and the timeline. And as we speak, we are in the process of pre-campaign. So I'm sure you would not expect me to begin to say this is the reason or this is why we must continue with what we have. Post September 28th, we'll tell Nigerians 1,001 reasons why Nigerians should stick with us. But saying that before the 20th of September, number one, we'll be breaching the law. Number two, it's like letting the cat out of the bag before, contestation. One thing I'm sure of is this, and very clearly, it's that February 2023, I'm sure Nigerians will not be in a position to want to experiment. Very clearly. So it's not going to be about somebody who was in the saddle for 12 years, another is in the saddle since the past 7 years, and therefore because of this, because of that, let us experiment. Take this to the bank. I'm sure Nigerians will not want to experiment.
Well, just to say this, we're not actually letting parties campaign yet. We're looking at some of the key factors that have been introduced into the system that may be determining
and I just
issues.
Told you so
just to highlight that.
Amongst other things, technology.
But then don't also forget that most of the issues affect a very huge population of young people, even though you said that there's also a dismal performance of some of them in Lagos. But you can't take away the fact that a significant, I think about 70% or thereabouts of them, according to INEC figures, all over the nation are the new set of voters. And even generally, a significant number of voters today are young people. And a good number of them feel hard done by so far.
Coyote, I will wait until after the INEC aggregation of voters and do a segmentation by the way of demography to see exactly who the voters I am targeting are. Other than that we have by our population indices, XY number of people fall into this category or into that category, and will translate, into this sector, coming out. A lot of issues will determine, how you encourage Nigerians to come out to vote. One of that positive issue, it's the beavers, which is speaking to one thing. Please come out. Your voice, which is your vote, will count. It's key. And what I think we should all be working towards, it's first in encouraging Nigerians. Okay, let me share this with you. Between 1999 and 2019, between 63 and 67% of Nigerians don't come out to exercise their franchise. That's huge. So forget about the number of newly registered voters or new registrants. Let us first as a nation concentrate on why that is so. You recall, I think sometime last year, I also made a statement here in this studio to Nigerians that when good people refuse to participate, that imbecile will take over the stage and make bad laws for good people to obey. That's where we are today. So how do we get that, cured or corrected? It's not by hyping. It's by, coming out with real issues.
Okay.
The issue, what I think will determine 2023 election, some of us are feeling it. Most Nigerians are feeling it. But then, by 2023, will they have an opportunity to interrogate those issues?
Well, that's one of the many questions to ask, and which is part of the reason that you're here. So many other things to raise, but let's go to Abuja. Mokwe has someone with her. Mokwe.
Indeed, gentlemen, thank you so much for throwing it this way. We are being joined, or we have right here in our studios with us, Mr. Muazu Magaji, who is a former governorship aspirant on the platform of the PDP. Maybe I'm trying to elevate you.
Yeah. Well.
But on the platform of the PDP. And he joins us here in our Abuja studios. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and good morning to you all in Lagos out there.
Well, when the last time you came, we thought that, maybe I would not be introducing you as a candidate or former governorship aspirant of the PDP. Maybe there'll be another designation for you, maybe from the Labour Party. I'm not certain. But in recent times, we've seen a major shift in the politics of Kano.
Correct.
Indeed, when we saw what was happening in Kano in the run-up to the primaries, we saw Governor Ganduje making a last-ditch effort trying to unite members of the party, but that was not to be. We saw former Governor Shekarau defect from the APC and join the NNPP, a party that many thought was going to, or many think is going to be a disruptor in the Northwest and, possibly across the country. It's not clear now. But just last week, this week, I think, we saw the former governor, Shekarau, defect again from the NNPP to the PDP. And he had very strong words, or pretty strong reason from defecting from there to the PDP, as the case might be. And people are wondering, what exactly is playing out in Kano, and how is this going to affected the calculations of the PDP across the country, despite what is happening, within the PDP itself?
So thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I just came back from Kano yesterday from that very ceremony of receiving former Governor Ibrahim Shekarau. Kano has been a very hotbed of political activities. I mean, it has lived up to its billing, and it's living up to its billing. What I think has just happened is the realignment or readjustment of the political balance of Kano. We have a tripod in Kano, the person of Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, Abdullah Umar Ganduje in government, and Malam Ibrahim Shekarau as a former governor. But the tripod was basically displaced by Shekaro going to join Konkaso, leaving one of the leg basically without a political leader that can be seen from afar. And that makes Kano politics unstable. And I think it is that instability that led to the dynamics that resulted in Malay Shekaro realizing that he has no future in NNPP. Despite its promise, you mentioned that it looks like a disruptor, but eventually as the momentum builds, those dynamics of disruptive qualities begin to wane and the limitations of that party begins to appear. And Shekaro, as a major stakeholder, not only in Kano, but nationally, if you recall, is one of the people that formed the APC merger. He represented ANPP in the merger. So he came back to PDP, and we're glad that he is back. We had a very robust ceremony. Kano has been a PDP state, by the way, since 1999. If you recall, we have produced governor under PDP twice, and we produced quite a number of senior elected officials at National Assembly. So it was the APC merger that led to Kano migrating to APC, including myself. If you recall, I left the APC for obvious reason, that the manifestation of the change and the promise that APC has put forward to the public, especially in a progressive state like Kano, has not really come to realization and manifested as a dividend of democracy. So some of us realized this early enough and left the party. And now we're looking at, generally speaking, if you look at the politics in Nigeria, what are our options? You rightly mentioned in the forum that just finished, there are four major platforms, and there are others that are coming up. But PDP, APC have ruled this country, and we've seen what they've done. Labour Party and NPP are disruptors, and they are coming up as change agents. However, like you rightly pointed out, the disruption capacity of NNPP is not very obvious, even in the Northwest where it is based. And Labour Party is coming up as a generational change agent. My concern with Labour, and like you rightly pointed out, you mentioned something about Labour, about me. I've actually had discussion with Labour regarding taking it to the Northwest and to Kano and actually aspiring for governorship. But when I sat down with the Labour people, I see some disconnect, especially in the North, between the principle that Labour Party represent for the middle class economy and the job creation and all the things Peter Obi is actually discussing. There is a major void in the North regarding the progressive tendency of that party. And therefore, I feel like it would be a hard sell for me, unfortunately, as a progressive politician from Kano. And I see the movement around Peter Obi, unfortunately, not expanding to the party. Now, this is very important for me to point out. I see Peter Obi as a transitional leader, and I hope, I just prayed he hasn't broken out with PDP. He could have been our vice president now, and in a very short while, he could have been the president from the East. But irrespective of that, Nigerians are looking up to the likes of Peter Obi, the likes of Konkosu, to be the next generation leaders. And therefore, now we are left with the two major political parties, PDP and APC. The challenge is APC going to be campaigning against APC, as you have heard in the discussion? How is APC going to campaign? And it's not about individuals. We've seen how individuals lead us to forming a government that all of a sudden, people we don't know, we've not seen, we've not assessed, come into power and take over this leadership and take it in a completely different direction. So we know Bola Ahmed Tinubu, but we know the APC as an institution has not delivered. We know Peter Obi, but the Labour Party do not have the personalities that we can vouch for to provide the necessary support. The same thing with Konkosu. But if you look at PDP, if you look at Atiku and the pedigree of PDP and the leadership structure and the spread, as well as the personalities, you can hold them accountable for what they have done before. And if you put them on a scale, what they have done before is way better than what APC have delivered to the country. So I am prepared to give PDP a second chance, having learned all the mistakes they have made, having also achieved the performance they have delivered, which we underrated at that time to have been a suboptimal performance. Today we are knowing that the country is being managed fairly well and stable, and we were protesting what we will have desired to see a major shift in the political and development goal of the Nigerian Federation. But we have experienced another change, APC, and we cannot go back to this trial and error like my elder statesman said, that we need to just leverage on the experience, on the pedigree of people we know, and transit this country. I am for a transitional leader. I think 2023 is a transitional period. The country has stagnated a lot of political actors and have not been able to develop their potential fully. And therefore, I see, like everywhere you listen to His Excellency Atiku, he will talk about grooming the young people and grooming the young leaders and bringing the economy back to life. And we all know he is a very, very good economic manager. He has managed enterprise, he has managed educational sector at private level, and he has successfully delivered results both in government as vice president. If you recall, he was chairman of the National Economic Council in the first time of Obasanjo.
I don't know if you're marketing your candidates already, but I mean, I know the campaigns will soon kickstart. Let's take a break at this point. We'll be back to examine just how, what is happening in Kano, because we know the people of the voters in Kano are quite sophisticated. They're not exactly loyal to any political party. It is about who they think can deliver that they vote for. So let us see how, your analysis of what is currently happening in Kano, could also be, let's say, a microcosm of what could be happening.
Northwestern Nigeria.
Exactly. That will be when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Well, we're still talking politics right here on Sunrise Daily, and we have with us in our studios here in Abuja, Mr. Muazu Magaji, former governorship aspirant of the PDP in Kano State. And you were just talking about what we said when we come back from the break. We're going to be talking about how Kano could be as a microcosm. I mean, the sophistication of the voters in Kano. You were talking about how Labour Party... First and foremost, is Labour Party able to gain ground in Ghana, considering the fact that the vice presidential candidate of the party is from that state?
So the vice president is a good family member of Kano, but he's from Kaduna State, from Zaria.
Oh, indeed.
But yes, but there is a candidate, a good friend of mine, Engineer Bashir Ishaq Bashir. I think he contested in PDM in the last election. He is now the Labour Party candidate. They're trying to put structure together. I think it's a transitional platform, like I said. Young people are plugging on, and I think it's going to pick some momentum. However, there is this dynamics of, like you rightly pointed out, the sophistication of Kano voters. There is something very important about Kano in the Northwest. And if you see what PDP has done, receiving Shekarau, they also did a Northwest caucus meeting. There is a reason for that. Kano represents the hub of the Northwest, and the APC merger jumped the Northwest. I need people to see this clearly. When the merger took place, the merger was between the Northwest geopolitical zone and the Southwest geopolitical zone as a dominant political blocks. And they came together and produced the presidency of Muhammadu Buhari. In the wisdom of APC today, they jumped Northwest and went to Northeast. I guess it's to challenge the base of the PDP candidate. However, that left a major void in APC. And states like Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, with such like over 10 million votes, are now up for grab. And that is why you see this scramble for the Northwest.
Are they really up for grabs? I mean, maybe what the APC is saying is, we think that we're solid enough in the Northwest to be able to go on. Let us see how we can get other regions into the fold.
That's the assumption, but I think it's a totally wrong assumption because of two reasons. One, the reason APC had a good showing in the Northwest was because of the candidate, the emotion of Muhammadu Buhari change agenda. And second, the reason they had governors was because the APC had allowed a process. Buhari, especially 2019, did not interfere so much. He had allowed the process to produce candidates that people are rallying around. The problem they will have today is, one, Buhari is not going to be the candidate, so they don't have a candidate, they don't have a presidential candidate, and they don't have a vice presidential candidate. But the second one is the promise of change did not manifest into positive results. And Kano is particularly passionate about President Buhari. And if you see the support base of Buhari from 2003 to 2015 was Kano. And now there is a huge disappointment. And add to that there is the Ganduje factor in Kano.
Okay, so let me break this down. Now, the Ganduje factor is a big question.
Correct.
I mean, as to what is happening in Kano, I think that the jury is out, and I think the electorate to decide whether or not he's done well for them. But if we were to also look at the players at the subnational level, how much of a factor would you say the rating of a governor, for instance, would affect whether or not, voters will continue to sway that way? Do you think that they also see how their governors, whichever party they belong to, how they have performed to be able to say, well, we might not be satisfied with what is happening at the federal level, or we don't even see how that is concerning us, but the person whom we know representing the party in this state has done pretty well, and as such, we're going to be, our loyalties will be with this particular party. And this is across board.
Across board. So I think there are three factors here. One, if the governor has performed or not. Second, if the party has fulfilled its obligation and the promise. And the third one, if the people have plugged into the agenda of either the change or the candidate of the opposition is strong enough to advocate a change. In my view, APC governors will suffer from the holistic performance deficit of the party at the center. If I take,
regardless of how they have performed.
Okay, let me take it, for example, Kaduna State. Rufai has done very well in Kaduna in terms of infrastructure, in terms of reforms in education and other sectors. But APC will struggle in Kaduna for two reasons. Because of this overview of Northwest issue I have earlier brought out, and the candidate he has brought has a lot of pockets of opposition. And that will result in people deciding the outcome of the election, not based on the performance of the sitting governor. However, it is the opposite if the sitting governor is not favorable. For example, if you come to Kano, you will say that the verdict the jury is yet to be out. But there are a lot of issues that people will consider. If you go to Kano, you will see infrastructure development on ground. But there are a lot of other social dynamics in Kano that people have not approved of Ganduje's administration, that people are now basically protesting. And that is what resulted in the momentum you see with Rabi Musa Kwankwaso NNPP. And that is what is now resulting in the momentum you are seeing in PDP. Literally, APC had two deficits in Kano: the holistic national performance deficit and the projection, the perception of the government of Abdullahi Umar Ganduje that allowed political actors to destroy his legacy. You know, the party is different from the government, but he allowed the party actors to destroy the base of the party, which doesn't exist. So the only thing you see when you look at Kano is the government of Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, not APC as a party. It does not exist literally.
Okay, let me send this back to Lagos. I do not know if the guests in our studio in Lagos will agree with you. Gentlemen.
All right. Just before, okay, Mr. Byron, you have a response to what he said. So just quickly, let's hear you.
I think Mr. Mwazu was spot on.
On which one?
His analysis of Kano and what is going on in Kano. I mean, look, whatever we do in politics at this stage in Nigeria, we must listen to the truth and accept what is going on. Kano State is the heart and the hub of progressivism in Nigeria since the days of Aminu Kano. You have the Yakasais there. You have a history where people actually interrogate who they vote for. I have never known, I am 63 years old, I have never known Kano to vote for anybody frivolously. They are deliberate in what they vote for, and they take their time. You see? So Mwazu is very, very correct. Having said that, and I'm so happy he said that because that is the analysis that Labour itself has done and is trying to respond to, and we will be responding to. What we have, I mean, he's spoken about our vice presidential candidate who comes from a very robust family, who has a pedigree of his own, who has demonstrated the kind of capacity and progressivism. Yes, he's from Katsina State, that is true. But Peter Obi himself holds Kano State as a priority. And that is why he is careful and committed. Yes, you have not the structure that Labour is going to go into, right? We haven't seen them yet. He mentioned something that we know the candidates. All three major candidates, Asiwaju, Peter Obi, and Atiku, have, with none of them, there is no experimentation. You know what you're going to get.
Where'd you put the NNPP candidate here?
Well, the NNPP candidate, I think he has a couple of challenges. I think, he's even far, far weaker in the South than whatever disadvantage you might think Peter Obi has in the North or Asiwaju has in the North.
We tried to get the representative on the program,
Yes.
but we were unsuccessful.
But the truth of the matter is that the Labour Party is actually going into these elections looking at each region for the issues they have within each region, 6 of the regions.
Okay. Can your deputy vice president, does he have, because people think that he doesn't really have that pool in Kaduna as it were.
Oh, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. In the first place, the secretary of the Northern Elders Forum is his brother. Because Dati Ahmed is quiet, and because he's not very loud and verbose the way he speaks, doesn't mean he's not very deeply rooted into the politics. This is a person who's been House of Reps and who's a senator, and whose also investments in education is vast, and whose presence he's highly respected. It's the connection that all we need to do in Labour Party is to connect the dots of what is already existing.
How long will that take?
We say this is a marathon, not a sprint. We have 7 months to go.
Okay. But Mr. Key, we'll come to you soon.
From September 28th, you will start knowing.
Yeah.
From September 28th, which is a couple of weeks, you will start knowing.
Okay, we'll come to you soon, but I need to follow up with Mr. Mogaji. Now, those who are beginning to interrogate that narrative about the homogeneous North, they ask questions as to the role of the middle belt here. Now, given what is playing out in your party, they think that the party may have a huge hurdle to cross here, and they could stumble if they don't handle it well. Because if you look at the middle belt, in fact, they compare the figures of 2015 and 2019, they say those figures are quite telling. And today, the likes of Michael Abdul, Jerry Garner, Jonah Jang, Otom, and the rest of them who have certain structures in that area will be significant if your party doesn't handle that well. And these are persons who may not necessarily stand corrected, care who wins the presidency, but they got candidates in the states. And if your party doesn't pay attention to that, that could be where you could have a problem with the PDP.
Well, thank you very much. I think before I came on, I saw 2 of my colleagues, Prince and Fabi, had a very robust discussion on the conflict in the PDP. I would like to assure you that North Central is a PDP region, and it is so because of one very unique factor. It is a national party. It is not a regional party, and the North Central always wanted to align with a national agenda that do not tend to regionalize the government. If you take all the 3 major candidates, they all have affiliation with the regions that they come from, and historically or in terms of their past activities. Both Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Peter Obi and Rabi Musa Kwankwaso, the people view them as regional first and then national. But if you look at our candidate, Atiku Abubakar, is viewed first as a national person before you even try to associate it with any region. And that is why the North Central is obviously a PDP region. And not only that, I am telling you that all the discussion I've had about the conflict in PDP will basically be resolved for 2 reasons. One, as you will have seen, that Wike's conflict is now not directly with our candidate, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. They sat down, they discussed, they understand themselves. We know the value of Wike in South-South and in Port Harcourt. He is the political leader there and in Port Harcourt, and we have a vice president from the South-South who also have a very strong relationship with the Southeast, and those regions have been dominantly PDP. The central zone are asking for an adjustment of some agreements. I would like to point out that there are two major agreements here. The first one is the discussion around Wike's commitment to the party that he is going to support whoever emerges as the candidate. And that commitment he made publicly, and we praise him, we have allowed him, and he is working towards implementing those commitments.
Okay.
The other part is whether or not our chairman should step aside based on the fact that now we have a presidential candidate from the north. And I think the reason that discussion got soured is the manner in which it has been approached. I believe that this is a very simple discussion to resolve. I will urge our very good leader in the South-South, Wike, to first of all commit to his promise of supporting our candidate and publicly do so. And then, of course, the leader of the party, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, will convene a meeting with the BOT and call the national chairman to discuss the formula for success in our party. What is the formula for success? Why are you actually advocating to change a chairman if the candidate is comfortable with him to lead the campaign to success in 2023? Because we are all looking for success.
All right, Mr. Magaji.
In a matter of 6
pardon me,
months,
we hear you.
campaign will be over, and then a new chairman can come on board.
Just a minute. Okay, well, we'll hear you quite but we need to also bring Mr. Oki in here. Well, you did speak to, perhaps in passing, about some figures which you thought were not exactly what you thought it was going to be. But if you look at the slide about this update by INEC concerning the completed registration as at 7 a.m. on Monday, 1st of August 2022. If you look at the distribution by age group, the youths 18 to 34 years, you see the figure there, 8,784,677. And then closely, which is quite a distance, coming second behind them, are those of the middle age who between 35 to 49 years old, 2,430,709. And then the elderly, 50 to 69, 956,017. Then 70 and above, 127,571. Now, this, you say you didn't see significant figures for the youths, but they here tower ahead of everybody else.
Chamberlain, this is the issue. We have new registrants, 8.7 million youths, right? 2019, the total number of registered voters was 84 million. Using the same, if you want to juxtapose what is registered now with what we have, it means again that the number of youths registered as voters will be in the region of 30-35%. What has become of that segment? That's what I'm trying to say. That what has become of that segment.
Yeah.
And you must also understand something. That age, the median, it's always idealistic in their approach. Hence what we see with the NSAS. My worry today is that will they be able to go the whole hog till February? I pray so. I honestly want to see them take the destiny of this country in their hands. That's my desire.
But what I mean, one of the if you look further at that particular demographic that Chamberlain quoted, you'll find that students make up 4.5 million.
I was going to that.
Okay.
I was going to that. You will also recall that each time we have election and you guys are on the field, a substantial percentage of that group will always be on the road or on the streets playing football. 1. 2, about 1/3 of them will ask you what is in it for me to go and vote. Another one third will be indifferent. That's my worry as an individual, that I hope we will find a way from September 28th with good voter education around this segment.
What motivation do you think we can give them? One of the major issues they have at this moment, for instance, ASU has been on strike for how many months? Generally, I think Mr. Fagboro Byron spoke to that, largely disenchanted, population. So what motivation, as far as they are concerned, everything they're hearing is rhetorics, because they've heard it before. They spoke about the difference the BVAS is going to make. What motivation do they have to vote so we can turn down?
Exactly the motivation now, it's the technology. They are savvy technologically. Let them, you see, power, you don't serve it a la carte. Nowhere in the world, you must grab it. Today, Nigerians will talk about, past leaders, which we call heroes. My brother alluded to one, the Yakasais, Aminu Kano, Ahmadu Bello, the great Zik of Africa, the sage Obafemi Awolowo. But we refuse to understand something, that they took control of leadership at about the same age that we have, with this huge number. And I think what we all need to do as leaders, as parents, as politicians, is, to have a very robust
Mr.
voter. Just a minute, sir.
Just a quick one on what you just mentioned, the Awolowos, the Sikhs and all of that. What advantage they had at the time was education. The same thing that they have been, those people in this age are being denied of.
Fine. Today, our children are at home doing nothing, unfortunately, born out of our irresponsibility. Now, the same children, the youth, should take advantage of this season by saying, you know what, we are going to retire, all of you. You've always known my position when it comes to national issues. It's not about party politics. It's about what is good for Nigeria. I will again plead with our youth to please, and for once, come out to exercise their franchise. Your votes will count. Please come out to do that.
All right. I imagine you'll be of the same view because we're about to close.
Absolutely. I totally agree with my brother there. The responsibility of all political parties now is to provide an offer, encourage people to come out and actually do the voting. We've said it, this is a marathon, so people shouldn't get tired too easily. A lot of people are going to wait. For the a lot of people are waiting for the campaigns to begin. But what has caused voter apathy in the past? What has caused voter apathy in the past is the fact that at some point in time, nobody knew the difference between who were being presented. What the Labour Party has provided now is an alternative, a credible alternative. And the full form of that credible alternative will manifest after the February 28th.
All right, Mr. Shino Fagboro Byron, former presidential candidate himself, now throws his way behind the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. We've also had Chief Ford, who is an APC chieftain. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you again.
Markwa?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. We're going to be asking our guest here closing comments in 30 seconds about how you think the elections are, or what you would like to see as an addition or play out in the 2023 elections.
Well, for me, to be honest with you, there is something that has appeared as a void, which is participatory democracy. I think this is very important. We're getting our structure now skewed the power to a very narrow space by a winner and everybody lose. I think we should adjust our structure to adopt a constitutional conference that Ekweme brought out, the vice presidential system. If we have that, the likes of Peter Obi, likes of Tinubu and Kwankwaso and Wike will all be Kashim, will all be vice president from the regions. And then they will chair the regional development commissions. And because the constitution right now has allowed 6 additional ministers, or we do to adjust them so that all these big players, when you win a certain percentage majority in that region, then you come out and then become the vice president. That will become not a winner take all. That is now destructive and a lot of tension in the politics. And I think we should discuss more on this to get the formula that will become more participatory, more accommodating, so that when people will support base, Nigeria is very big, that loses election, they don't lose everything to contribute their quota to the country.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, some people also argue about what if you get substantial votes, but the votes are not from your region. There'll be questions on that.
So when they have to have a discussion,
it's a rhetorical question.
So it's a participatory.
We're totally out of time, Mr. Magaji. I have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. He's a former governorship aspirant on the platform of the PDP in Kano State.